Hillary has been lengthening her excuses as to why she lost the election. She didn't really lose the election. It was stolen from her by, I think it's up to 24 different excuses she has now. Number 24 is content farms in Macedonia. And as I said, my grandfather was a Macedonian content farmer, and we often think about, gathering on the porch and recalling the old days on the Macedonian. He never thought that the old content farmers he left behind in Macedonia would one day steal the U.S. presidential election. They are gnarled, hard-working Macedonian peasants, and the way they were able to reach out and steal the election.
Welcome to this very special episode of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. We're recording this episode at the end of May, and in anticipation of some summer travel for us, we wanted to have something in the can to share with listeners while we're away and on the road. And so we thought, well, why not record an episode on tourism in Macedonia when we're away on travel, and before Macedonians themselves get traveling within Macedonia or in the region. So this is a very special episode of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. My name is Jason Miko, and I am coming to you from the heart of Tucson, Arizona.
And this is Cvetin. I'm calling in from Skopje, which is the main tourism destination of Macedonia, apparently.
You know, it is. Well, of course, let's be honest, Macedonia has two major international airports, Skopje and Ohrid. So if you are arriving by air, you will fly into Skopje or you will fly into Ohrid. If you are traveling by car, you will come in through, I don't know how many actual entry points there are. 15, 20, 25 now? I know they keep opening them up.
Yeah, it could be 15.
And yeah, of course, there's actually, and you can arrive by train as well. But if you are
not recommended,
not recommended. You know what? I have done so. Just to set the record straight, I've been in the Balkans since 1992. I've been involved in Macedonia since 1996 for 23 years. I have traveled. Obviously, I've flown into Macedonia. I have also traveled by train, by bus, by car, by foot. I have hiked around in Macedonia, and we're going to discuss all of that. Cvetin, one of the things I want to talk about, and this is, I don't know if tell me if there's a word in the Macedonian language that would approximate what the word that I am going to use next. And the word is staycation.
Staycation.
Staycation. Can we introduce that into the Macedonian language?
I have to think about it. Can't really think of a translation off the top of my mind. And
yeah, obviously, I think most listeners would know that the staycation means you basically stay at home, and that doesn't mean in your literal home. It doesn't even mean in your hometown. It can mean in the region. And Macedonia is such a compact country. It's frequently compared to, in terms of size, because a lot of people can wrap their heads around it, the size of Vermont. With Bernie Sanders very prominent today, people are actively Googling Vermont and seeing where it is and how big it is and whatnot. So folks know they can see the size of Vermont as compared to some of the other states. You get an idea then of how big Macedonia is. There's so much packed into Macedonia, even though it is often described as a small country and landlocked, with the exception, of course, that there's no sea, there's no ocean, there's lakes. That's what Macedonia has, and Macedonia has lakes in abundance. So I've traveled all of these different ways. But since you started with Skopje, obviously, that's where a lot of folks come in, especially the internationals. They fly into Skopje, and then they spend a couple of days there, and then they travel outside of Skopje. A lot of them don't, though, which is unfortunate because they're missing so much throughout the country. But tell you what, why don't we start with talking a little bit about some of the places we've both been, both for work and for pleasure throughout Macedonia. I know you mentioned that you haven't been able to get out as much as you'd like to in the recent past, but I know you've traveled throughout the country. Let's start with this, actually. What's your man, this is a loaded question, I think. What's your favorite town or city or village in Macedonia?
Oh, well,
or do you have one?
Yeah,
Sorry?
I like going to Bitola. It's got the mountain, which, it's got this lovely hiking trails. Even though anybody who's seen me will realize I'm not much into hiking, but it's real nice. It's real pretty up on Mount Pilister. Uh,
Yes.
it's got the one proper like European-looking old style shopping street in the country, which is the Shirok Sokak, the broad street of Bitola. Bitola was obviously
Yeah.
actually the capital of Macedonia, of this part of
Right.
Macedonia, before Skopje gained prominence for mainly for political reasons. After Serbia occupied Macedonia, and she wanted the capital closer to Serbia. But in reality, Bitola was supposed to be the actual center of this region, if we discount Solun, Thessaloniki, which is the
Right.
capital of the region of Macedonia. So Bitola is on the Via Ignatia, so one of the oldest streets, oldest highways in the world, essentially. It was a major trading center of the Linkestis part of Macedonia since antiquity. It's got this huge fertile valley of Pelagonia to its north. It's got the mountains. It's got
Heraclea.
what else have they got there? Uh,
Heraclea.
there, yeah, the old Heraclea Linkestis, the old city. So yeah, it's the
The
probably
which people should know that's the ruins that they're actively. It's an active excavation site.
yeah.
And archaeologists are there digging in the ground and preserving. I mean, that's one of the great things about Macedonia, especially if you're a history buff. I think is that it has so much to offer for in terms of the history and the archaeology. You've got active digs at Heraclea, Stobi, Skupi, and throughout the country. I don't know how many there actually are. I probably should have.
Oh, whenever you dig up, build a road, you come up with new digs, with new excavation sites.
That's true. Although you see that throughout all of Europe because Europe is so old, obviously. People have occupied Europe for thousands of years. And so, yeah, so you stick a shovel in the ground and something comes up. But yeah, that's a good pick. I think our friend Jerry, who I know is listening to this podcast, will be pleased. You get bonus points, Cvetin, for saying that. And the beauty is that you believe it. It's true.
Yeah, it's really lovely. You can do some light skiing there. The people are
Yeah.
interesting. It's very very lovely place.
Yeah, I've been there many times. I've hiked around on Peliston Mountain, stayed at the what's the hotel there, Moleka.
Amolik
Now
is
I
up the
don't know.
mountains, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if they've renovated that hotel lately. It could use some renovations. It's been many years since I've been there, but it's a nice, comfortable place to stay. At least it was last time I was there.
I was there recently. It's passable.
Okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, but I love the see, and here's the thing. I'm from Arizona, and so we're also a landlocked state. We don't have. I didn't grow up with the ocean or the sea or anything like that. So, I'm a mountain guy. I love mountains and deserts. Ocean, sea, could take it or leave it. It doesn't matter to me. I love lakes. Obviously, we have a lot of lakes in Arizona. Believe it or not. But the mountains and the pines and the scent of the pines, and you find that on the mountain there overlooking Bitula.
Yeah, the only other mountain, the other properly wooded part of Macedonia, which I don't go as often, but it's really pretty. It's the Birova region. It's the hills and mountains around Birova and Lake Birova. That's like some proper American-style forest-looking region.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up too, because I was going to talk about for Berovo as one of the regions that I would recommend. The hotel, actually, it's the Aurora, Resort
yeah.
and Spa. Yeah, which is absolutely fantastic. It's beautiful. It's set in the mountains. You can walk down to Lake Berovo from there. The hospitality is first rate. My friend Slave, who runs the resort and spa, will treat you very, very well. As he says it, the oxygen there at in the hills above Berovo actually is of a higher level, or something the way he describes it. So you can drink as much red wine as you want and not wake up with a headache.
Yeah.
And actually, it's true. I tried.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bervo, the hills, the forest, everything, the lake, and of course the Aurora Spa and Resort. There's a number of other spas and resorts around Macedonia that a lot of people don't even realize. So, you fly into Skopje and you see, well, now we've got the Marriott, obviously the Holiday Inn has been there
Oh, you
forever.
have a Hilton
Then you have a Hilton now, right? Did the Radisson ever get built? Or is it
No.
being built? No. Okay, so you've got a Hilton, you've got
I
Marriott. You got a lot of brand name hotels, and they're all fine and whatnot. But of course, it's Skopje, it's the capital, it's the Marriott, and you're going to pay for all that stuff combined. But if you get out to the Aurora Resort and Spa, or what's the one down in Prespa owned by the New Jersey folks, the Lakeview Hotel, places like that. It's the Hotel Bell Common, which I've never been to. Some of these other places are going to be very inexpensive and really enjoyable, and probably won't be packed depending on the time of year that you go. But this is, in doing this special episode of the Macedonian Content Farmers podcast, just based on tourism, I want to encourage, going back to the word staycation, I want to encourage Macedonians to get out and explore Macedonia. You don't have to go. I understand the desire to go to southern Macedonia, Greece, Solun, Solonenash, and to Bulgaria and places like that, or even further afield, and that's all fine and good. But Macedonians, I think on average take 2 to 3 vacations a year, whether it's a few days or a week. Get out and explore the rest of Macedonia. I remember it was 10 years ago. Well, let's see, 2008. No, 11 years ago now, when we were actually doing the filming for our documentary film, A Name is a Name, and we had just finished the last scene, which we actually filmed above in the hills above Berovo. And it was a sheep farmer and his wife and kids, and I think it was his parents that lived there. And it was just one of these typical Macedonian happenings where we had gone, we had filmed, and as soon as we're done filming, all of a sudden, the parents brought out, I think it was some breads and cheeses. And then, or no, actually, maybe it was the rakia. The rakia came out first, and then it was some breads and cheeses, and then we all sat down, and then some pickled vegetables and more cheeses and ivar and other spreads and more rakia, and beer and wine, and it was one of those things where we had intended after we had finished filming to just go, and then of course the Macedonian hospitality kicked in, and we were there for at least another 2 hours just eating and drinking and enjoying one another's company. And that is the Macedonian spirit, the hospitality that endears so many people to Macedonia. And after we had finished that and we were packing up to leave, one of our crew members said, I'm telling my wife and my son next year, because we were filming in the fall, he said, next summer, we are just going to travel around Macedonia and see all that Macedonia has to offer. Yeah, and because Macedonia has so much. I like to talk about my favorite Ks, believe it or not. Kratovo, Kruševo, Kriva Palanka, Kokino, and Krnjevo. Now, have you ever heard of Krnjevo?
No, I have a neighborhood next door called Krnjeva, but not really.
Okay, all right. Okay. Well, okay, so this is next to another sort of, I should have mentioned Kavadarci, of course. So this is near, or just outside of Kavadarci. Krnjevo is where it's, let me see, I have this huge map of Macedonia spread out on my desk right now just to jog my memory on some things. Krnjevo is south, looks like it's about south,
toward the mountains?
Southeast of Kavadarci. Yeah, it's a little town, population 14. Not 1,400, but 14.
Hamlet.
And my friend Biljana, her dad has Trajkovsky Wines and Spirits. That's where they operate out of. And I don't know if they offer regular opportunities to come there or not. You could certainly call ahead, and I'm sure that her folks would arrange. But I remember taking some friends down there a couple of years ago. Beautiful gazebo out in their yard, river running just next to the house. And we had ordered some light food and snacks, and And then, of course, the wines that her dad produced, and the Mastica and the Rakia, and it was just an idyllic, lovely afternoon, perfect weather. It was just beautiful. And there's just so many places like that. Of course, Kavadarci in the Tikvesh region is home to, Macedonia's famous and fabled wine country. There's so many wineries down there, and of course, I think as we've talked about, I'm a big wine aficionado, especially of Macedonian wine, and I have to give you these quotes. So Robert Louis Stevenson, the Scottish poet, novelist, and travel writer, once stated that wine is bottled poetry.
Aha, lovely.
Now, yes. Now, Rebecca West, the English author and travel writer, writing in her seminal work, Black Lamb and Grey Falcon, in 1941, she wrote this: I had recognized in Macedonia a uniquely beautiful life of the people. When the Macedonians loved or sang or worshiped God or watched their sheep, they brought to the business in hand poetic minds. And so you bring those two statements together, and I think, the wine is one of those gifts that you can give others from outside of Macedonia, especially if you're traveling and take it with you. It's the Macedonian wine is Macedonia bottled, and I think there's up to 80 wineries now throughout Macedonia.
Yeah, it's becoming a very popular tourism thingy. Like all the winery owners are also opening up restaurants and hotels to accompany their vineyards. They're trying to go for this Tuscany look, and they're succeeding pretty well, pretty good at this. So yeah, basically, if you go to Kavadarci and all along the Vardar River Valley, you would get a lot of choices to stay in wineries and taste wines, have lunch, sleep over. It's real developing, growing as a tourism branch.
It is, and I'm glad you said Tuscany, because that's exactly what it reminds me of in traveling through the Tikvesh region. Let's see. Last year I was in it was last May. So about a little over a year ago, I came with some friends, and we did. This is hard to do. It's actually impossible to do because we didn't quite succeed at it. But we hit 4 wineries in one day.
Wow.
Now for those who have for those who have done wine tasting in the United States, you go to Napa or Sonoma, or you come to Arizona's wine country, and you can hit 5 or 6 wineries because you're going to each one with your little glass, and you're getting just a taste, just a small pour of 5 or 6 wines, and you're tasting that, and then you're moving along to the next one. So you're spending 45 minutes at a winery. Now, you and I both know that you cannot possibly spend just 45 minutes at a winery in Macedonia.
The concept of small sips does not exist here, no.
Well, there's that plus the food and the hospitality. So you've got to have meza, the small plates that come out with and between each pouring. So we started off at Chateau Sopot, and then we went to Tikvesh, and then Bovin, and ended up at Popovakula. And that was a full day. I think we left Skopje about 10 in the morning. We ended up at Popovakula at about 10 or 11 at night.
You had wine for breakfast.
Just about. Most of the guys that I was with were completely knackered. By the time I got to Popovakula, we weren't actually doing a proper wine tasting. I was just ordering off the menu and trying them so I could compare, because Popovakula, of course, Jordan Trajkov, my friend there, is responsible for bringing back from almost near extinction the Stanoshina grape. And it's the Stanoshina grape, which is endemic to Macedonia. It is only found in the Republic of Macedonia. Of course, those who know think about Macedonia, and when they think about Macedonia and grapes or wine, they think about Vranets, which is actually Montenegrin in origin, but it is grown. It's more in abundance and it grows better, I think, in Macedonia.
Hey, we better lay off this issue. We don't want to have the Vranets issue with a NATO member state like Montenegro, please.
Oh, you mean bilateral dispute?
Yeah, it's coming. It's going to happen, you know.
Bilateral dispute. Where is Vranets from? Montenegro or Macedonia? Well, okay, I will concede that it's from Montenegro, but it's much better in Macedonia. You see, look, man, I'm in public relations. I can do this all day long. So, but anyway, so we ended up at Popova Kula, which is a great winery. I love what Jordan Trekov has done there. He's established the small hotel that he's got as part of the winery, and then some other rooms down. And he's got all kinds of outdoor activities that you can do, from horseback riding and hiking. I think some mountain biking as well, and day trips to the region and whatnot. And that's something we haven't even talked about. Macedonia has so much to offer just in terms of outdoor activities. There's fishing, there's hunting, horseback riding. One of the big things is paragliding. Macedonia has become I guess a center, or I'm not sure what you would call it, but a lot of events are held there, and competition amongst paragliders, which I don't know if I've
a lot of people do it in Kruševa.
In Kruševa,
we
exactly,
see them all
yes.
the time. They fly out of Kruševa. It's the one center which is becoming prominent. I've seen them around Skopje as well. You can do it elsewhere, but I think Kruševa is the best known by now.
I agree. I know I've seen them jump off, paragliding off of Vodno, but yeah, Kruševa's best. Paraglidingmacedonia.com is one of the websites I found just in doing a quick little research before this. I don't know if I'm, the older I get, the more risk averse I become. So I'm not sure if you're ever. I'd love to do it because I love flying, but I'm not sure if I'm ever going to do that.
No,
but
I never.
You're not going to do it. Okay. Well, but the hiking outdoor. You mentioned you. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're trying to get yourself killed, there's also, I think, rock climbing near Popova Kula, near the winery, near Demirkapia, in the Demirkapia Gorge, carved out by the Vardar River. But I think, I suppose ideally you go rock climbing first, then wine drinking later. I'm not sure how well these two things mix.
Yeah, I have seen those rock climbers there in the Demirkapia area. Above Matka Canyon, and I'm sure there's plenty of other places. I've actually done very little rock climbing. My brother-in-law is big into that, but my speed is the hiking. So in the past, as a teenager, I used to hike all around the mountains here in southern Arizona with a backpack and overnights and things like that. And I've just started to get into that again. I got all new equipment and whatnot. I'd love to come over there and do it. Actually, this reminds me, there is a trail, and golly, I can't remember what it is. It goes throughout the Balkans. It is. I'm going to have to look it up, and we'll put it in the show notes. But there's an entire trail, basically, that has been put together, and it goes from Slovenia through what was Yugoslavia, ends up. It also includes, I think, Albania as well, and
the Migrant Trail.
The Migrant Trail.
I've actually taken people migrant spotting, if you can believe it. Close
Is that like train spotting?
Yeah, something like that. You just hello, Afghanistan, Syria, Afghanistan. Okay, merhaba. Carry on. Good luck.
And so the hike here it is. Here's the hiking the trail I found. It's called the Via Dinarica Alliance, a mega hiking trail across the Western Balkans. And it's Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, Albania, Kosovo, Macedonia, and Serbia. So basically, it's everything. And maybe we can put a link to this in the show notes along with some of these other things. But it is if for anybody that is familiar with the Appalachian Trail here in America, or actually we have here in Arizona, it's called the Arizona Trail. It literally goes from the southern border, which would be with Mexico, all the way to the northern border, which would be with Utah. It's 800 miles long. This trail, the Via Dinarica, I'm not sure how long it is, but it's long. So I'd love to do that. I'm trying to get my brother-in-law interested in coming out here to do that.
You'll need a bunch of passports and a bunch of currencies. You have to cross. How many countries do you go through?
I don't know,
1, 2, 3, Bosnia. 4, 5, 6. Oh God.
Well, you know what? We'll bring dollars.
They call them the Dinaric Alps.
Yeah, the Dinaric Alps. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but anyway, so yes, and actually, in getting back to the hiking that I've done a little on Pelister. I've done Tito Vrv a couple of times. The fun one for me is simply the Vodno Matka Trail. You guys either go halfway up or all the way up, and then over across to Matka, then down and reward yourself with a big lunch down there. That's always fun. Where else have I hiked? A couple other places here and there. Of course, you've got Mavrovo National Park. You've got Galičica National Park. A number of other national parks where you can do outdoor hiking, biking, the mountain biking. So I've got all these ideas, Cvetin, that of things that are done here in Arizona and the States. I'd love to transport over there because they would work. And one of them is mountain biking. And so we've got a little company here in Tucson that has grown by leaps and bounds. It started by doing what's called the 24-hour trail or 24-hour ride. I can't remember. Where they've got teams of mountain bikers on a closed course that go out and they literally ride for 24 hours. And you can do it solo, which would probably kill you, or again, most of these people are teams, 2, 3, 4, or larger, and they take turns and whatnot. But it's through the night. And then they've also set up these events in other parts of Arizona, depending on the terrain. But I think Macedonia has some fantastic terrain that would suit itself perfectly for mountain biking. And I'd love to see some of these events so that it becomes, like the paragliding, a world-class destination site for people to come to and compete in mountain biking, in paragliding, in wine drinking. Well, you don't compete in wine drinking.
Yeah.
But it's a world-class destination for folks to come to that they really haven't perhaps thought about in the past, as a place to come and experience. And again, getting out of Skopje and going throughout the country and just experiencing the hospitality that I was talking about earlier, and some of the unique things that Macedonia has to offer that other countries in the region, other countries in Europe, other countries in the world don't have. I mean, again, you can only get Stanushina in Macedonia. Of course, you can, as Jordan begins to export it, obviously you can get it around the region, and even in New Jersey, I believe. But if you really want to experience what it's like to taste this grape that is only found in Macedonia, in my humble opinion, you should go to Popova and stay there for 2 nights and learn about the grape and where it comes from and what makes it special and how it tastes and whatnot. So anyway, that's kind of my idea on promoting Macedonia through tourism. And I know that you've got a lot of travel agencies there, obviously, but in the world today, as the information technology and communications becomes more and more prevalent, obviously people just book their own trips. A lot of people do.
Basically everybody's now doing like Airbnb their apartments in Skopje, but also across the country. You get tour guides online you can find easily. Accommodation is very easy, very good in Skopje. It's a bit harder across the country in other places, but you can find small boutique hotels like in Bitola, and obviously Ohrid has well-developed accommodation services. Biro has got, as we mentioned, one great resort and several other smaller, nicer, mid-sized, mid-level hotels. You can find nice hotels in Štip as well. In Mavrovo is a big, well-developed ski resort as well, with proper hotels, proper restaurants. You can find there a beautiful view of the artificial lake down there. And then once you are located in Mavrovo, you can easily head out to Galičnik, which is a largely abandoned village, which was one of the main centers for cheese making in the region. And also it was a very important, like a city up the mountains, and served as a cultural center of the Miak region. Right. They're essentially considered a special race of people up there, the Miaci. They had their own cultural renaissance and influenced the development of the country a lot. So you can use...
And the wedding.
Yep.
Yeah, the famous wedding every July.
Traditional Galičnik wedding. Yeah. They try to resurrect all the customs of an old traditional wedding with the horses and the dances and the music, and uh, they try to find, it's now usually people who live in Skopje, but they will try to find people who originate from Galichnik and who also, by the way, preferably want to get married.
Right.
So they to recreate the event.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that the Glichnik wedding, of course, has actually made it into some of the big travel press around the world. Obviously, I think National Geographic has featured it, and maybe the New York Times. I'm not sure. But yeah, so yeah, events like that are culturally, those you can say definitively that is Macedonian, and for those that are looking for that culture, you're not going to find it anywhere else except in Macedonia. But going back to the hotels, yeah, you mentioned Airbnb, and I've actually tried that a few times.
Yeah.
When I've been in for a long period of time in Skopje, and I don't want to stay with friends and push people out of their beds and whatnot, I've just gone on and got the Airbnb, and it works out perfectly. And now that I think about it, it would be very interesting. And I'm thinking now, just off the top of my head, about wine country, because folks are coming in and they want to visit the wineries down in the Cvetin region, and that's only an hour drive from Skopje.
Yeah.
But you certainly don't want to be coming down there and doing 2 3-hour wine tastings and then drive back to Skopje.
Yeah.
That would not be. We would not recommend that on this podcast. So if there are, I'm sure there are Airbnbs down there where people could spend the night. Small hotels, I'm sure, as well. But then there's also plenty of folks in Skopje, tour travel operators that are willing to take people around the country for a reasonable fee and serve as the driver, tour guide, and whatnot. And so many young people, especially in Skopje, speak English, they speak German, whatever language you need, they speak it, and they are more than ready and willing to be your travel guide and travel operator and take you around the country.
Yep. Then if you want to visit other live cultural heritage events like the Galichnik wedding, another annual thing is the Vivchani Carnival. I mean, you have carnivals all across Macedonia. Basically, every city holds one. But this one is considered particularly important because it easily dates a couple of millennia back. It easily dates back into pagan times, and you can notice this by the shape, by the masks of animals and demons and monsters, which the villagers build. Yeah, and it's in January around St. Basil's Day, Vasilica.
Right.
But it's also gotten a political connotation because the village is known for fierce independence spirit. They were
they have their own passport, right?
Currency, passports, everything. As all the Yugoslav republics were seceding from Serbia, they also declared independence for a brief while. They had a major fight with the police at that time because the communist government ordered them to give water to a neighboring village, and they considered this water their own, and that they should be the ones who decide. So they were beaten by the police for this. It was a major scandal shortly before the breakup of Yugoslavia. So they have this kind of spirit since forever, and it's an interesting place to visit. And besides, it's easily pairable with Ohrid. Now, if you go for the carnival, you would be visiting Ohrid off season because it's in January.
Right.
But still, you have the best accommodation, best hotels in that part of the country. Ohrid is obviously the biggest tourism destination, now being overtaken by Skopje because of the business and diplomatic tourism. But for cultural and natural beauty tourism and even like a summer vacation vibe, obviously Ohrid is the place to go.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's stay on that for a minute and talk about Ohrid. I just want to point out for folks that may not know, Vevchani is you mentioned, it is near Ohrid. It is actually closer to Struga, right near the border with Albania. So it's just north and west of Struga. But yeah, if you're in that area, obviously Vevchani is a place to visit. But Ohrid, you're right. It is the jewel of Macedonia. It is with Tsar Samuel's fortress overlooking both the town and the lake, and I think almost every friend I know in Skopje has a family apartment or a cottage or something in the Ohrid region, if not Ohrid itself. But then as you go south towards Cvetin, of course you have all kinds of little villages that are right there along the lake that are beautiful, just right on the lake, and then kind of up the hill, up the mountain. Torpeța is one of my favorites. It's just beautiful, and the little rocky shore down there at the bottom and whatnot. But Ohrid, of course, as we mentioned at the top of the podcast, Ohrid you can fly into. It's more seasonal, I think. A lot of our Dutch friends fly there in the summer, and the Dutch have been coming there for what? I don't know.
Yeah, there was some
50
book
years?
published in the Netherlands about Ohrid, and it's become a tourist destination, and they keep coming each year in organized tours.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic. I have to tell this story. It's kind of funny. I remember in 2000 and I think it was 2006. Yeah, it was 2006. So Brian Ferry and Roxy Music came to Ohrid to play, and I think a lot of listeners might know I'm a huge Brian Ferry Roxy Music fan, and so they played fantastic concert. Obviously, the next morning they were getting ready to depart. I went over and I talked to Brian and his manager and some others as they were getting ready to depart, but they had wanted to see Ohrid town. So the organizers of Roxy Music coming to Macedonia and to Ohrid arranged a local driver to take, I think it was Brian Ferry, Andy Mackay, the saxophonist, and one of his guitarists. I can't remember who it was. Just a little tour driving around. It was actually endearing. Apparently the guy drives up in his Mercedes, and he's got two small children with him. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what is going on here? This man has two small children. He's going to take Brian Ferry and Andy Mackay and another guy around Macedonia, around Ohrid. And the backstory is that poor guy could not find a babysitter for whatever reason for his two kids. So the great thing is these two kids who, let's say, they'd be now 16, 17 years old,
right,
spent a morning touring Ohrid with Brian Ferry. I don't know if they know that or realize it, but I think that's just kind of one of those.
Yeah, there was a foreign
Huh?
person who were driving around. They're probably thinking.
Yeah, well, I do remember watching as the Mercedes pulled out. As Brian Ferry was in the front passenger seat. He was smiling, so I think that was a good thing. So, and he's been there twice. And of course I'm a huge, as I mentioned, I'm an '80s guy. I love Roxy Music, Brian Ferry, Morten Harket from. Sorry.
A stan, a groupie.
I am a groupie, yes. Morten Harket from Aha came to Ohrid actually. I had a small hand in bringing him down there so he could speak at a conference in 2007, and then and so I was with him, spent a couple of days with him down there, and of course he loved it as well. Still trying to get Aha to come back to Macedonia. I said by the time this podcast actually hits the air, Sting will have come and gone, but Sting has been there a couple of times.
Yep.
Hasn't he? Yeah. And this is kind of I think a testament where this is slightly off of the tourism issue, although these big acts coming to Macedonia, whether it's Roxy Music or Sting or Bob Dylan, so many of these other guys, the big names, obviously bring in folks from the surrounding region, because these artists can't hit every single capital in the region, so they choose one or two, and then folks from around obviously come in, and that is tourism. They're coming there, they're spending their dollars or their euros or whatever it is they've got, and of course most of that, of course, is in Skopje. So, but it's nice to see that Sting has come back a couple of times. I remember I've seen, let's see, now I'm going off on a tangent, but I've seen David Byrne from Talking Heads in Macedonia, not once, but twice. Seen Brian Ferry there a couple of times, once with Roxy Music and then once by himself.
Bob Dylan was here.
Bob Dylan was there. Yeah, I have a couple of huge Bob Dylan fans that friends that wanted to see him. I'm not a huge Bob Dylan fan. Trying to think of some of the others, but anyway, again, I think this just points to the fact that when you've got these big artists coming into Macedonia, they're coming there because Macedonia is on the map. As so many, not to go political in a tourism edition of the Macedonian Content Farmers podcast, but so many of our friends in the current government and our friends in the European Union and NATO say that Macedonia will only be European once it joins NATO and the European Union, and well, that's an absolute lie. Macedonia is already European; it's part of Europe, and all of these big artists, even the smaller artists coming there, prove that.
We're like literally 100 kilometers from the Europe River, so which was used to name the continent. But oh well.
Yeah. So anyway, kind of moving on. I wanna talk. I know we talked about Ohrid, but and I mentioned the lakeside or the Lakeview Hotel in Prespa. Macedonia, of course, also has Doiran, which is on the border with Greece in southeastern
Southeast, yeah.
Macedonia. Yeah. And it's funny that all three of the major lakes of Macedonia are all divided between Macedonia and one or two, in the case of Prespa, other countries, for better or for worse. But then there's all kinds of other little lakes.
Usually for worse.
I'm sorry?
For worse.
For worse, well, yeah. You got Bervo, you've got the Mavrovo Lake with the famous sunken church. You've got the Kozjak near Skopje.
Yep.
What else? I'm looking here on my map. Just it dotted all over the place. I remember our mutual friend Chris took me to Veles, not to Veles, just outside of Kavadarci one year, Tikvesh Lake, which is an artificial lake.
Yep.
And we took a motorboat up, I don't know how far up the canyon, and we stopped at a monastery. And it was a monastery, I think it was dedicated to Zardushan's brother, I believe. I may have that wrong. But anyway, just, again, one of those afternoons where we just tooled up the lake in a little boat, stopped there, had one of these big Macedonian lunches with rakia and everything else, and did a little swimming in the lake, and then went back, and little things like that I remember because they were special, and it was something you can't do that just anywhere. Certainly, you can get on a lake, and you can take a motorboat, and you can tool up and down the lake. But you can't stop at a monastery that's 1,000 years old or something like that. And you can't have Macedonian food and rakia. And you can't combine all of that together at the same time. It just, very few places where you can do that. And so little things like that really endear Macedonia to me.
Yeah, to tick off the main monasteries you should visit if you're doing that. They would be Sveti Jovan Bigorski in the west of the country, toward Debar.
Yes.
In Skopje, you should see St. Panteleimon on Vodna. It's about, again, 1200s, 1300s sometime.
Yep.
In Kriva Palanka toward the border with Bulgaria, if you're driving straight from Skopje toward Bulgaria, it's Sveti Joachim Osogovsky, St. John of Osogova.
Yep.
And Ohrid, obviously, the cathedrals of Ohrid, like St. Sophia and Sveti Clement and Sveti Naum at the south, at the monastery at the south of the southern end of the lake. It's essentially the center of Eastern Christian literacy. It was the place where the Bible was first transcribed into a newly codified alphabet.
Right.
What was it now? 1,000+ years ago.
Yeah.
In the Cyrillic, those funny Russian-looking letters were actually defined and put in place in Ohrid, and it was a major scriptorium, a university where they would transcribe the Bible and spread it out throughout whole of Eastern Europe. So basically, all the Slavic-speaking countries from Poland, the Czech Republic, all the way down to east to Vladivostok, to the end of the continent of Eurasia. Christianity and literacy was spread, starting in Ohrid.
Yeah,
this is why it's such an important place for pilgrimage.
Yes, absolutely. Good point. I'm glad you mentioned that and the other monasteries. I've been to all of those and can attest to what you just said, that they're all fantastic places with the history. But more than the history, just the sense of you I think, as a believer, that you really experience the presence of God in these places, and would encourage listeners to go and visit and do likewise. they're great to see because of the architecture, the art inside, the frescoes and the paintings and things like that. But these really are spiritual places, and these are places where, as you mentioned, um, the, um, the Macedonian Orthodox faith and the Christian faith was first given to the people in that time, and then it spread out from there. And so that's just there's a lot going on there besides the history. And let's see, and Ohrid, just to stay on the monastery theme for a moment, Ohrid, of course, the story is that at one point it had 365 monasteries. I don't know if that is still the case or not. I have been to nowhere near 365 monasteries in Ohrid.
No, I think it's considered churches.
Okay.
And churches, counting the villages around, you could get close.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. Actually, that would be. Now, here's something. I just thought of this. I'm glad we're talking about this because a coffee table book of the 365 churches and monasteries in Ohrid.
Yep, it could work.
I like it. I'll put that on my list of things to do. Well, Cvetin, we've kind of taken a virtual tour of all of Macedonia, or at least most of Macedonia. I know we haven't talked about Tetovo or Gostivar or Kumanovo or Prilep or Štip or Strumica or some of these other places, but we've kind of gone back and forth, up and down, east to west, throughout Macedonia, talking about the history and the archaeology and the faith and the churches, the food, the wine, the outdoor activities, of which there are so many, accommodations, everything. But we kind of started in Skopje. Why don't we just kind of end in Skopje, since it is the capital. You lived there. When I lived in Macedonia, I lived there. I lived in, I think, 5 different apartments while I was there. And of course, I go back once, twice, 3 times a year. What's your favorite, besides, okay, this is a loaded question, so let me put a disclaimer in front. Besides where you live, in the area of town in which you live, what's your favorite part of Skopje?
Favorite part. Thinking. You actually got me here.
I got you some. I can. Okay, you ask me the question, and then you can.
No,
think
it's
about
fine. It's fine. I'll think.
No, ask me the question because I already have an answer. So.
Oh, okay. What are you gonna say? Shall I say something else?
Okay, Debarmalo.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna go with the bazaar then.
Okay.
Obviously, I mean, the main tourism drag and the place where I would I sometimes like to spend my time is the old bazaar. It's essentially the old city of Skopje, just underneath the fortress of Kala,
Right.
and it used to be the industrial, the mercantile center of the city during the Ottoman times. This is basically the second incarnation of Skopje. The first one was quite some way to the west, again along the Vardar River, built on a hill, but it was destroyed by an earthquake and by all the invasions we've had going on. So this is the second incarnation, if my history is correct.
Right.
And a lot has survived from the old bazaar. You can still find this lovely paved cobble streets and shops, which obviously they no longer produce. They're no longer like the industrial center, but they're selling all sorts of handmade crafts, books, food, Ottoman-style dishes, which you can get here. The kebabs and the gyros and the sweet stuff. Food dripping with sherbet, with sugary sherbet. So yeah, it's still, it's not artificial. It's not cardboard, cut out.
It's authentic.
Cookie cutter made.
It's authentic.
Yeah, still. Yeah. Everything else around the city is essentially just built up on top of the old bazaar district, or the Chayr, which is what we call it now.
Yeah. Well, actually, no. The old bazaar, I like that. I remember when I first got to Macedonia in 1996. There weren't a lot of tourists there. There weren't a lot of people there. And
It was scary for a while. It was a rough.
yeah, exactly.
It was a rough neighborhood.
And it was about, I don't know if it was, I'm losing track of time here, maybe 10 years ago, when I remember walking over there one day and I stumbled on the Timov wine bar. So my friend Pane Timov opened up the wine bar there at the top of the main street when you cross the old stone bridge. And you just keep going straight up the hill. And it was this lovely wood and brick bar with all these wines, and it became quite popular. Then he opened up the brewery, and that whole street, from the top on down, became loaded with lots of little. There's the first rakia bar, 5 or 6 years ago, I think, opened up there, and now, of course, it's everybody goes over there, and it's a very popular spot with, especially with the young people, with tourists and whatnot.
Yeah, he did a lot to revive that part of the city, to tourist it up a little bit and gentrify it.
Of course, he also does the twice a year the wine fest and the Pivoland and Buskerfest with the
that's great fun.
Yeah, so
jugglers and
exactly, yeah. So he's done a lot to bring that to Skopje, and of course, as I said, Debar Malo is my favorite part of Skopje. It's just I lived in that part of town for a while. The number of restaurants there that I really love. Najik is my favorite. My friend Stole that operates that, and that is it's simple. It is clean. It is good food. It is good drink, and you can sit there as long as you want. You can't do that in a restaurant in America.
Yeah, that's what tourists like in Macedonia. The food. I mean, it's really something.
It's the food, the drink, and the atmosphere of being able to sit there and enjoy your food and drink and your conversation, your fellowship and your friendship for as long as you bloody well please.
Yeah. Yeah, I was surprised in the States when people would just come over and check out. The waiters would just come checking up. Like you finished your pizza. Would there be anything more, sir? Very, very nicely, very, politely, but they're politely telling you to go, and that wouldn't happen here.
I tell you, exactly. There's a great burger place here that does gourmet burgers here in Tucson that I like to take my family to sometimes, and we have a joke that as soon as we sit down, they bring us the check.
Yeah,
because it's literally within 60 seconds of sitting down, they've asked us what drink order do we want. And then 2 minutes later, they come back with our drinks, and they ask us, what food do we want? And I'll tell you what we want. We want to be left alone with our drinks. And then we'll tell you when we're ready to order food and another round of drinks, etc. So, yeah, that's just part of the entire culture, I think, of Macedonia. And you find it throughout the region. I don't want to diss them. But that's what's endeared me. One of the big things that's endeared me to Macedonia is just that whole atmosphere of relationships and taking time to spend time with your family and your friends and those you love, and enjoying good food and drink, and that's what life is all about. Life isn't all about chasing after the latest job and the new raise and the latest car and whatnot. It's about relationships, and I think that's one thing that Macedonia really celebrates is relationships.
Yeah. And then once you're in Skopje, good food, but also slightly better climate outside of the concrete of Skopje, and much better surroundings is the Matka Canyon, just west of the city, which also has some lovely old monasteries and churches around. The entire name actually means womb, and it's supposed to mean like a cultural, like a Christian center of the city. So that's lovely to check out.
Vodno, of course. A couple of places up on Vodno where you can go to eat, and then they've got the the lift? Not the lift.
A gondola.
Gondola, thank you. That takes you up from midpoint up to the Millennium Cross up there.
Yeah. And the city is full of tourists. I mean, I was just seeing this morning a lot of Korean, Chinese-looking tourists around. We've never used to have that, especially before the major redevelopment done by Nikola Gruevski, who essentially built a new city in the downtown, which was essentially Skopje was this Ottoman-style, Byzantine-style city with a fort, And then, because it had a horrific earthquake in '63, it was
Right.
rebuilt by the communist government in an industrial and centralized administrative fashion, which meant a lot of brutalist architecture with concrete on the outside, which for me is, the most despicable, evil thing you can do to a city,
Right.
style-wise. And then there were also like huge undeveloped places around the city where, because it was state-owned and the state no longer had resources to build or finish it, they had grand plans as usual with the leftists, but never completed. And it was taken away from the owners. The land was taken away from the owners, or it was or the Jewish quarter, in which case the owners were killed in the Holocaust. So large parts of the city were left undeveloped. It was all rebuilt and redone in the past 15 years, 10 to 15 years, and it's a completely new city now with
Yeah.
much more classical styled architecture for public works which were built in this period.
Yeah, you bring up good points that just jogged my memory on a couple of things real quick. Number one, the rebuilding, but number two, of course, the inexpensive flights. Wizz Air being the prime carrier that's come in that the previous government was able to bring in. And of course, they're bringing in the tourists. And the tourists are spending their dollars, their euros, their yen, whatever. That's number one. Number two, so I've got the historical knowledge of having, when you live in a place constantly, you don't necessarily see the changes going on. But when you come and go, and I remember what it was like in 1996 when I first set foot there, especially, Cvetin, along the Vardar, right off the Plostad, on the, what do you call it? What's the key? The K? The key?
K.
K, right, yeah.
I
always forget the French.
English word.
I always forget the French word.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I remember that whole area where it's just lined with restaurants right now. You have those big trees.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the trees are, but you have that whole area right now lined with restaurants. But in 1996, it was nothing but slabs of broken cement, and there was nothing there. And now, and of course, the restaurants have been there for 10, 12 years at least, I think. But there's that. You mentioned the Jewish quarter. I think it's important to mention that Skopje is one of the only capitals in the world that has a Holocaust museum, and it's right across the street from the museum to the victims of communism. So I don't think you have those two museums next to each other anywhere in the world. And of course, the fact that Mother Teresa is a daughter of Skopje. She was born there. Her house was what is now the Plostad, was literally where her house was. But the memorial, of course, is just literally down the street from that. So folks coming to Skopje, there's so much to do there. Besides the usual stuff, and reaching into the history and then remembering people that are arriving now aren't going to remember what it was like then, but just letting them know that it has really developed in a good way, in my opinion. And we have some friends that think that's not true. They're right. But to your point about the tourists coming in, when you have the Asian tourists coming in by the plane load with cameras swinging around their necks, you know that you're just another normal European city, and these are tourists coming to visit you, and that's what you want.
Even the critics of the redevelopment were then frequently seen taking pictures and even posting them on social media from the newly built museums and buildings and monuments.
Oh, I love it when you can get the critics to admit that this is actually a good thing. Then you know you've won. So, well, I think we've literally covered the country in just under an hour here with this special tourism episode of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. Again, we're doing this at the end of May. Hopefully, we'll get this out in late June when I know I'm traveling. I'm not sure what your travel schedule is, but I'm going to be out and about here in the States, taking some friends around Arizona and parts of the Southwest. But I hope that we've been able to impart to listeners and others this sense that, Macedonia has got a lot in it, and there's a lot to do and a lot to see, and it's a great place to spend some time just traveling and traveling around as a tourist or as a traveler.
Yep, it's a worthwhile destination to try and discover.
Yeah, amen. I have to. You know what? We like quoting our old friend G.K. Chesterton, in so many issues of politics and whatnot. But on this, and let me see if I can remember it correctly, his quote about travel and tourism, G.K. Chesterton says, the traveler, the tourist sees what he came to see. The traveler sees what he sees. I like that. So you can be a traveler. Be a tourist too. I'm a traveler now.
Yeah, try to soak up the place.
Exactly. So
while you're there.
All right. Well, I look forward to my next visit to Macedonia. I don't know when that's going to be, but you know what? We're going to go to the old bazaar, and we're going to go to Debarmalo, and we're going to have a nice lunch at Nagic, and maybe we'll even get down to Bitola and see Jerry.
Yeah, we'll be posting pictures.
Absolutely, all along the way.
Instagramming all the stuff.
Yeah, I need to get an Instagram account. Thank you for reminding me. So,
I need to post something on my Instagram account.
All right. Cvetin, always good talking to you.
Okay, buddy.
Take care.
You too, take care.